So given the discussions that we had previously with the warm-up exercises, from this set of exercises and the discussion, we can derive some key principles that you should be thinking about when doing prompting with interfaces like ChatGPT. So the first principle that I think about in general when I'm doing prompt interaction with ChatGPT interface is the issue of clarity and specificity, right? What we want to do is we want to have prompt that should be clear in conveying the user's intent, and it ensures that the prompt guide the AI toward the desired output without ambiguity. And this is one of the principles that you should be following when you are doing prompt engineering or when you are using the prompting interface of ChatGPT. Contextual information. Now, providing relevant background or context in your prompts to help the large language model or the ChatGPT interface understand the user's request or question is also a good principle to have when you're doing prompting. Bias mitigation, and this is a topic that we'll be talking about. We need to craft prompts that can avoid or minimize the biases in the AI model responses that we have. That's another principle. Then demonstrative examples, right? Prompts that provide concrete examples or concrete context to the interface so that it can understand what you're asking for is going to be very, very effective in most of the cases. So where you're using demonstrative example, giving some examples so that it can understand your question from a different perspective, different lens, and provide you more suitable thing is also one of the principles for effective prompting that you can use. And finally, length and complexity, right? And this refers to how concise or detailed a prompt should be based upon the desired responses that you want from the ChatGPT kind of model, right? So you need to focus also, in some cases, if it is too small, then it might not be very useful. In some cases, if it's too detailed and big, it might not be useful too. So there is an optimum balance in terms of length and complexity that you should be seeking when you are doing prompting with interfaces like ChatGPT. So having discussed this, let's go back and look into one specific use cases with respect to all of this 5 different principles of effective prompting. So what I will try to do in the demo is I will try to show you a prompt which is not clear and specific, and then give you a prompt that is somewhat more clear and specific, and we'll go through all of these 5 different principles one by one. So here is an example where I am asking ChatGPT to tell me about cars, right? And it is going to provide me a response. It is going to be obviously a very detailed response because we are not scoped about it. Now, according to me, this is a good prompt. It's a very generic prompt, right? So you can be a lot more specific in this prompt to get good responses out of it. Now, so if you're dealing with the issue of clarity and specificity, then in that case, probably we need to be more specific, right? So in that setting, a prompt which is this, where I'm asking ChatGPT to provide an overview of electric cars and their impact on the automotive industry, could be a more specific and more clear prompt than what we have provided previously. So this is a demo where we are basically changing a prompt which is too general and vague, and we are making it more clear and specific, and the answers, or at least the quality of answers that we can expect from large language models or ChatGPT in this case is going to be far better than asking a very generic question. So now, as you can see, the response is more focused on electric cars. It gives you the salient aspect of it, and how the whole topic is sort of impacting the automotive industry in general, right? So let's move on to the second case where we basically want to second case where we are asking, again, giving a sort of a broad and not so specific and clear prompt, and the answers that you will get will be very, very generic and very, very broad, and it's not going to be useful information unless you are really interested in even learning the concept of space, right? So in this setting, what a good, clear, specific prompt could be something like this, where we want to describe the concept of space and time in a specific theory, which is, a very world famous theory of general relativity, right? So this prompt is a modified version of the prompt that I gave previously, where I'm asking the ChatGPT to, basically describe the concept of space-time, and then in the context of general relativity. So in this case, we are more precise in terms of what we are asking, and we are more specific in terms of what we are asking out of the ChatGPT interface. So let's move on to the second example, the example where we are talking about the contextual information, where we need to provide some context to get better responses. Right? So here is again, a sort of very broad and, general prompt where we are asking ChatGPT to provide information about climate change. Obviously, it's going to give you a good answer, but, an alternative way of posing this prompt where we can provide it a little bit more context could be discuss the effect of climate change on Arctic ecosystem. So now this is a little bit more precise, a little bit more focused than the previous prompt that we have. And that way you can change your prompt and address the issue and provide the ChatGPT with the contextual information or a focus that is typically lacking in the previous version of the prompt that I showed for here, right? So here we are discussing, essentially the effects of climate change on our Arctic ecosystem. And, now the response is changed, and hopefully this is something that you're looking for out of the ChatGPT interface when you started interacting with it in the context of this exercise. Okay, so let's move on and let's talk about some other, issues. Again, I will talk about bias mitigation in a little bit more detail than what I have here, but here is an example where you can, provide prompts which are not biased, right? So here we are asking the ChatGPT to essentially, explain the, we are asking the ChatGPT interface to, comment on the impact of immigration and on the crime rates, right? Now, when we are doing this, right, this is great, maybe implying a causal link between immigration and crime to the AI itself, right? So due to the input that we provide, it's probably may think there is a causal link between immigration and crime, and it might bias the output that large language models might have. So in this setting, I think a better way to do this will be essentially, probably rephrasing this prompt and asking this question in a slightly unbiased way than what is there, where we can ask it to analyze the factor influencing crime rates and explore the complex relationship with immigration. Rather than giving a causal relationship, we are still asking the same question, but in a slightly different way, using a slightly different prompt. And this way, the output of the model is probably going to be not susceptible to bias in its overall answers. So if you compare the answer that you're getting from the previous and other, you will see the answer is slightly going to be unbiased, and it's it's going to be a sort of doing bias mitigation for you. So when we are asking for prompts, maybe it's a good idea to modify your prompt in such a way that it is also able to do bias mitigation. Fourth example that I want to do, which is basically about a demonstrative example. So here is what we want to do is we are using a ChatGPT interface for creating a resume, right? So and this is one of the tasks that ChatGPT can do. You can really enhance your resume and other things with the interaction with ChatGPT type interfaces. But the prompt here that we are giving here in this case could considerably benefit if we provide a demonstrative example. And what I mean by that is, rather than giving a prompt that generates a resume for a candidate with a background in marketing, which might be your background, and it gives you sort of a good answer, but it could be done in a better way if we provide a specific prompt where we are also providing a demonstrative example. So here is an example of the prompt which probably falls in this category. Is we are also giving demonstrative examples such as you may have already a skill set that you have developed and executed digital marketing campaign, or you have led social media advertising efforts and so forth. So you're giving this sort of additional demonstrative example that should be the part of your resume, and this provides a lot more context to the large language models to give you or provide you a better set of response with respect to this query, right? So this is an example where you can provide some, demonstrative examples or your context for the large language model to provide you better response, right? I have given this this prompt, which is the prompt that I'm showing you here. The answer is showing you here, where I have provided at least two more specific things. But what I will suggest, if you're using something like this for improving your resume, you can probably copy paste the text of your whole resume to provide it a lot more context or a lot more demonstrative example than asking a very broad and general question, right? So just taking your word version of your resume, copying, and then say that, okay, you maybe create a resume where the previous resumes look like this, and suggest me the strategies to improve this resume, or suggest me formats to improve the resume, and so forth and so on. And if you're doing that, then you will be gleaning, or at least getting a lot more useful information than creating something, a prompt, something which is very generic and in a vanilla sense, where you're asking to generate resume with a background in marketing, right? So this is an example where we are talking about, demonstrative example, providing some context, demonstrative example in the prompt itself, so that you get better answers out of the overall interface itself. Let's move on to the final category that I wanted to discuss, which is the category of fifth principle, which is the principle related to length and complexity, right? So here is an example where we are asking, again, we are providing a good question, but it could be done better, a lot better, if you increase the complexity and increase the length of the prompt itself, right? So we are asking the ChatGPT to explain the water cycle, and obviously it is providing all sorts of information. Hopefully this information is useful, and we have to go through this. But what could be done better with this prompt is probably providing more details and increasing the length of this prompt and providing it more context. So here we are asking ChatGPT in the modified version of the prompt that provide a detailed explanation of water cycle, including the processes of evaporation, condensation. So we are giving it more complex, information, and we are also, increasing the length of the prompt. And hopefully, when the large language model gets this different length or different way of asking, and it also gives some supplementary information, right? It gives you answers which are more suited for what you are seeking with respect to the actual original question that you might have actually posed.